So you go ahead and go to this tiny URL. You can follow along with us because there's going to be some links, and we're going to actually have you do things. This is an interactive one. And I guess before I start more officially, I'm Ginny Vandergaan, and I'm in the Department of Biology at CSUN. And my colleague is Matthew DeLisio, who's in the Department of Geology at CSUN. So we are actually part of a bigger team on our campus that collaborates between the colleges of Ed and the colleges of Science and Math. And so a lot of what we're presenting is also some of the stuff we do PD on for science teachers in LAUSD, more specifically in the San Fernando Valley area. And also, these are things that we're using in our own university classrooms. And so both Matthew and I teach pre-service teachers, but we also both teach majors classes in our departments too. Okay, so.
Make sure you get to that URL, because you have to follow along with our presentation.
Everybody there? Some of the things that we're going to show you, I know Sean's done a little bit with you on too, so we'll skim through that. And if there's things that wow you and you want us to stop and show you some more, we're happy to do that too. Okay, is everybody there? Yep. Our beautiful slides. So this is a Google presentation using the presentation tool in Google. And it does have some limitations. It doesn't quite do everything that PowerPoint does, but the advantage, of course, is that you can share it.
We know Sean has used it, but have other of you used the presentation tool in Google? No. Okay. Like I said, it should be very familiar if you use PowerPoint or Keynote. Same basic thing. You'll see some other fun stuff when we do it later.
Okay. Next slide.
Oh, yeah.
I'm waiting for you.
Oh, sorry. That's our overview.
So this is our overview, and we're not at DH, we're at F, but we can change that really quickly on the spot. So we introduced ourselves. We're going to talk a little bit about CSCS, and then do an actual survey on Quickwrites, and then talk about data accountability, getting inside students' heads, and that'll become clear when we get to that. And we're also going to use Google Moderator today. And then we're hoping to have you make your own form. So computer-supported collaborative science is the team that I belong to on the campus with Matthew. And like I said, there's a core of 5 of us, but the bigger group contains science educators, and also we have a representative from each department on that team. So we have from each department in the College of Science. So we have a geologist, biologist, which is the 2 of us. We have a physics professor and a chemistry professor. And what we call ourselves in our kind of tool that we've been using with teachers is this taking hands-on activities and shifting them into a more collaborative, predictive type of mode. And we're using Google tools to do such a thing. So when working in our own classrooms and in our own settings and with teachers, we're not trying to say, throw away wet labs, use only technology. In fact, we encourage them to continue to do the classic labs, and I've used this in my own biology classes with my university students too. So in order to demonstrate exactly what this means, we're going to do this activity, which is on the next page. And what I'm going to have you do is complete the brief survey on phenotypes. So you need to click on phenotypes and follow along. And this is just a...
I'm going to wait until everybody gets to the phenotype button.
This is an exercise I do on the first day of genetics when I teach genetics. Actually, my specialty is genetics. And also with my non-majors classes, I do this when I do the genetics section. So I used to do it with paper and pencil, and I turned it into a document, a survey, a Google survey. And these are examples of what those all look for. So go ahead and put your first name, and then go ahead and write what you could do and what you can't do. Yeah, hitchhiker's thumb is when your thumb is. Does anybody in here teach genetics?
That was not my dream.
Playing around with
Yeah, and if you need to ask someone to help you with your earlobes. Or widow's peak. I have a slight widow's peak. And no, it's not a picture of John Travolta's hair. It's a picture of his chin dimple. And Morton's toe, it actually got cut off, but Morton's toe is when your second toe is bigger than your big toe. Some people have that. And clasping your hands, when you clasp your hands, it's more comfortable one way or the other. And it's a genetic trait, actually, which a lot of people didn't know. So for me, it's more comfortable to have my right thumb over my left thumb. And for some people, it's more comfortable to have their left thumb over their right thumb.
Was that hitchhiker's thumb? Where did that go?
That's right here.
Oh.
That's when you can curl back. Yeah, you have one.
So you have one?
Uh-huh. Some people can't curl that at all.
It'll be helpful if you just see two different.
Yeah, that's a great comment. Yeah, so to have a picture with nobody, with,
Like the earlobe.
yeah.
What's the mid?
Oh, mid-digital hair is, you have hair right here.
Oh.
And some people, and I have really fine hair, so I actually have to look. And some people even have it not on every finger, but on some. So mine's.
Looking at, if you hit your back button a couple times and go back to your slide.
You could actually, we have linked you to the results. Now, sometimes when you do forms, you won't ever see the results of the forms if you are a participant. And only the person who created the form can do that, unless you share it with everybody. So that's what I did. So what you'll notice is that you guys are all down here. And you'll notice that you're starting at number 51. And this is to demonstrate, or number 50. This is to demonstrate how to collaborate data. So if you scroll all the way up to the top, you'll notice that these are my students. This is what I did this fall. So I did this in the fall with my students. And you're also going to notice that if you go all the way up to the top, Matthew, that I've actually put in formulas that have calculated the percent. Now, if you go through and change the numbers, you're going to see these numbers change as he changes. And what he's doing is he's doing a find. In case it's just like you would on a regular spreadsheet. And he's going to change yeses and nos to zeros and ones. And I do yeses and nos because for some reason my students have an easier time answering yes, no versus 1, 0. So, and then you can see that it changed it all. But I wanted to do, that's not what I wanted. Don't yet.
No?
Go back up to the top for a minute.
Okay.
Because I wanted to show you that these are changing as you do that. Okay, now go.
So I'm going to replace this over here, so we're going to change.
No.
0.
Yeah.
That's all.
And so you see that these numbers changed once so this formula is embedded within the spreadsheet, just like you would do on an Excel spreadsheet. All right, so then we can actually take all of this and chart it. So I already had this chart set up, and your data was actually added to this. This looked different in a previous version. And what you're going to notice is that we've got these all color-coded. So here we've got tongue rolling, here we've got widow's peak, attached earlobes, etc. Okay? And you can see that not too many people have red-green color blindness or a dimpled chin. So if we go to the next slide. Sorry, you're trying to eat in between here.
Do you want me to do the slides?
Well, that's
Okay. So you all should follow along here as well.
okay. So now what I want you to do is put your ideas here in this Quickwrite link. I'm going to ask you a question about the phenotype. So if you click on this Quickwrite link, you're going to see that there's a table here. And if you look at tongue rolling, can you tell whether it is dominant or not? And what about widow's peak? Explain your answer. Now I'm just going to assign you, so you'll be number 1, you'll be number 2, 3, 4, and 5. So go ahead and answer accordingly. the question.
So you mean if I look at someone tongue rolling, can I tell if it's dominant?
So if we looked at that table, can we tell whether it's dominant or not? Yeah.
How can we get back to that table?
Okay, you want to go back to the table?
Yeah.
From the slides, we get back to the slides. Go back to the slide that says Quickwrite about phenotype questions, and click on the Quickwrite link.
No, she wants to go to the table, the phenotype table.
Phenotype table, the picture, up, right.
The chart.
The chart.
Yeah.
There we go.
Perfect.
Okay, so now you have the spreadsheet up in front. I can be showing the data to my students, and you can tell whether. So 82.69% of the population that I've tested so far can roll their tongue, and it's probably like 26% of the population has a widow's peak. And all I have to do is, it's 28.3% have a widow's peak. Okay, so if you switch it back to the spreadsheet.
Well, these are much better answers. Make it hills.
Yeah. Okay, so the reason I asked this question is this is a lead-in for me. This is a question that I used to do as a Quickwrite on index cards with my students. And then I would leave this and I would say, actually, tongue rolling is a dominant trait and widow's peak is a dominant trait. And then I'd say, okay, so now let's talk about Mendel. And then I would give my lecture on Mendel. And then we'd come back to this. Now before, when I used to do this with index cards and paper and pencil, usually I didn't get back to it till the next period, so it meant remembering to bring those back to class with me, writing all that data down again, and showing it on the board. It's here now. I can call it up, and we can look at it really quickly. So that's the advantage. Now, I use Quickwrites a lot in my class. I have even before I started using technology tools, because when you teach 95 students, it's hard to keep them entertained. I'm not a very good singer or dancer. And so I would stop periodically and check for understanding. And it would keep them active in the process. So it's one of the reasons I use this. The other thing is now using this, I can actually get a better, I used to have to go home and look at the index cards, right? I don't have time during the lecture. But now I can do this by taking and selecting a column, for example. And this is something that Sean's actually already showed you, and you can put it in a Wordle. And so if he puts this in to a Wordle, we just paste all those words in to there, and it will sometimes it takes a second. But what's nice about this is it gives you a pictorial, plus the students, a pictorial of what people are asking or answering. So in this case, and it's usually kind of pretty, and my students think it's pretty cool, and they now use them all the time for different things themselves. But you can see the, yeah, so you can randomize what the type is, and for some reason its layout is funny. But what you'll see is that alleles was used, evolutionary, responded, etc. And what's supposed to happen is the words that are used more often are bigger. You can also see when people misspell words because they'll put both versions. It doesn't have a spell check in it. But it's kind of gives you in a glance, okay, so people are kind of on the right track about alleles and understanding that. And in a lot of cases, my students don't understand that yet because we haven't talked about it yet. All right, so if we go back to
Quickwrite, or you want to go on?
go on. So that's one of the ways that I use in my class to look at this, and this is just another idea using word pictures. And so again, this is actually our own Wordle based on we were trying to figure out how to define CSCS, and this is what our group came up with. And you'll notice that our names are actually in here, so Norm and Mike, who are part of our group, and there's Matthew and there's Brian. And because we selected everything and just threw it in here just to kind of see what jumped out at all of us in terms of commonalities to our responses. So the other thing that I just demonstrated to you was the idea of collaborating with data. So if you go to the next slide here, what you're going to see is that you can actually pool larger data sets. So if I had just used the 5 of you in this room, it's not a lot of data. And in fact, it's kind of a good example of a lab group, right? Usually my lab groups are in groups of 4. And I could have a lab group that could come up with data like this for an experiment. This is just a made-up experiment. But when you get the whole group together, which you could do on a Google form by having them fill out their line of the spreadsheet, you can see that this right here was an outlier, which you wouldn't have been able to tell just looking at this data, but they wouldn't really be able to draw much of a conclusion. Here, now you can look at this, and everybody together looks at this data and can determine whatever it is that you're trying to get them to look at. So in this case, that's the slope of the line, best fit line between all these data points is going to give them a little bit more insight into what the data was really all about. The other thing that I notice when I do this with my students is that they actually seem to pay attention to the data, and they write more thoughtful answers when they're doing the conclusion section of their lab reports and things like that. The other thing that I notice when I do this with my students is that they actually seem to pay attention to the data, and they write more thoughtful answers when they're doing the conclusion section of their lab reports and things like that. So I just demonstrated 2 quick tools for you that could be used for formative assessments or as an engaging tool in a lesson. But also, you saw that I showed you forms which can be private. So you don't know what anybody else's response is until I show you that spreadsheet. But I also showed you the Quickwrite, which means that your students can see other students' answers, which is fine. It depends upon what you're trying to get at. So if I really wanted an individual's answers, I would probably do it in a format. If it was more just to get them all on the same page and engaged in whatever we're trying to do, I would just do the spreadsheet. And I did Quickwrites every day. So my Quickwrites page, I just would hide the columns, and I kept them all. So now I have it forever. I don't have all these index cards in my office anymore. And I can go and look. I use it as a way of seeing how well they're participating. When they come and say things to me like, I don't understand why I got a C in the class, I can say, well, you weren't even here these 3 days, and on these 3 days your answers were, whatever you want to say. I don't grade them, but it does give me an idea of where they're at.
So, I'm sorry, do you teach all your classes in classrooms like this?
Good question. No, I don't teach them in classrooms like this at all, actually. So one of the things is that we actually had a Hewlett-Packard grant, and so we bought tablets, computers, which are kind of cool. So they're like little laptops, and then we bought these mini laptops. So the mini laptops we lend out, we bought 100 of them, and we lend them out to LA Unified teachers, and they use them in their classrooms. In my case, I have like a set of 25, but I have 48 students, and so the rest of my students either have, like iPads or their own laptops, and I just let them grade them. This is the first year where I've done that, where I let them have, because actually I used to be afraid of letting my students have computers because they're on Facebook or whatever. What I found was if I periodically would throw in things like Quickwrites, or if I just kind of notice that they're up there typing, and I'm not saying anything that they should have to be writing down, I'll just make up a question right then and there and make them answer. So you still have that problem, but the other thing is you can do things like forms. They can do them on smartphones and things like that. So a lot of my students, they may not have a beautiful house or anything like that, but they seem to all have smartphones. I don't know. I mean, because the demographics of students here are probably pretty similar to what they are at CSUN. And so, and then last but not least is you can make it an assignment and say, do this, because even if my student doesn't have a computer at school, there's so many computer labs that are open on campus, they could do it that way. And then we're going to show you how to do some of this within a lab. So in a lab, I actually they were throwing out these really old maps. Well, they still work, and they still will let me upload Google documents on them. So I have 6 of them across the back of my lab, and that's how many.
And that's my teaching environment as well. This is one of the computers that I have in my classroom. I got 6 of them that I
so they
bring
they
around
work as a
for
group.
36 students. Yeah. And by working in teams, we are able to get technology in enough hands to make the collaboration worthwhile, really. But absolutely, it's an interesting question about things. And of course, this is all changing. So in 5 years, that question will be an even less useful question because, of course, more people are going to have things that will be able to do this. And like almost all of them will by that point. But now, a lot of them don't. But with just 6 computers, I can get a whole bunch of stuff going on.
At the risk of slowing things down a little bit,
No.
I think about that a lot because
Yeah.
I did a fair amount of work on technology and education. But it's not just do you have a computer or a smartphone. It's also how is a classroom set up for that? Are the desks set up for writing, or are they set up for computer use? So I've taught in classes where students have those fold-down desks,
Yeah.
and they have a laptop, and they're trying to take notes, and things like that. And so it's not just a question of the technology in the hands. The whole system has to kind of shift a little bit.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
it's something that's come up a lot for us in trying to get some of our things. Labs are set up well for having computers in front of everybody like this is, but
Yeah.
classroom environment isn't always, and so that's why I was curious about that tool, like more sort of the classroom rather than the technology.
Right, and we do find that, I taught in a class like that with the folding. I actually, until you said that, I hadn't even thought about it because they didn't complain. But I don't know, I guess they're kind of, some of them are used to it, and a lot of them, what I notice when I post my slides up is that they're now using the note part of slides, and they take their own notes on the slides. So they're typing on the computers. So yeah. So, but it's funny because I hadn't even thought about that. But you're right. I was making them do them on these little.
And most of the classes I teach are in newly redesigned rooms that were built on like super low budget, but they were built around the ideas of collaboration and teams. And so I've got these custom cut tables that our science shop put together that are designed to have groups of 6 and exactly 6, neither more nor less, sitting around this table. We did all sorts of measurements and research of how big a table should it be for them to each have their own personal space. And so this sort of thing, that's what an ideal environment is. But again, I don't have them all working on computers. So things like the Quickwrite. The Quickwrite is best done with one-to-one, right? You want to hear everybody's ideas. And so that's the best place to do it, is to have everybody have a computer. But a lot of things like what we're going to be talking about in a few moments is looking at collaborating with data, and that's done lab group to lab group. And we are still going to get a lot of the aspects of accountability in there, but we aren't going to need quite as many computers to do it. So we're going to transition to that idea by looking at this slide that Ginny had. So here's a class. They're looking at this colorful plot, and they say, who's the red team? And what did they screw up and do wrong? Data accountability is really cool. And let me show you how that works in an actual classroom with a bunch of pre-service teachers that I have. I have this wonderful hands-on activity that I do with them. It's a physical science class. They're launching these water-powered rockets. And I did this before I started using a lot of technology. And I wanted to have them do something interesting with it. I didn't just want them to launch the rockets and be done with it. I wanted them to analyze data. And so I had them do some simple video analysis. And they used to have to do all these calculations by hand. They're real simple. It's distance equals rate times time. It's like literally it is the 6th grade math standards, but challenging for some of them. But the problem is that they didn't do it very well. They made mistakes somewhere along the way. Even though it's simple calculations, there were a lot of steps, because if you're doing video analysis of multiple frames, you can mess up in a lot of different places. And they would turn it in, and I'd say, that's clearly not right. I can see that you've got your rocket going 10,000 miles an hour. It wasn't doing that. And they say, oh, shoot, is that going to hurt my grade? Like, well, depends. So enter in the world of technology, and let's see what happens. So the other cool thing about these Google Spreadsheets is that they actually allow us to track revision history. And I think Sean showed you some of that, I think. Minute-by-minute revision history. So what I was able to do is I'm actually able to reconstruct what my classroom looked like and what the data looked like as people were working through a problem, which is kind of neat. And this is a team-based problem. There are 6 teams on here. And you were looking at a snapshot from 2:33 p.m. And Team 4, the green ones here, they have finished their calculations. Team 2 hasn't gotten there yet, and a couple other teams are underneath that haven't finished their calculations, and a couple other teams have finished their calculations. So Team 4 is sitting there, and they're waiting for everybody else to finish. They're chatting about, the big game yesterday, the big party yesterday, whatever it is. They're having a nice time. One of them is still staring at the screen where this is being projected in the front of the room and saying, wait a minute, this doesn't look right. What's going on at the end of this plot here? It goes up and down a bunch right at the end. And so I say, well, what do you think? Is it real or not? The first thing to do is to check your raw data, make sure. And the raw data that they have is actually made up of all 6 of their team members made measurements of the same exact rocket. And they should have gotten the exact same answer. And the spreadsheet there was using the average of all of them. And here are the 6 measurements. Stands out pretty clearly who has done things wrong. And you can see at 2:35 p.m., Ashley tells us that she was really tired when she recorded her data. And you can see that. You can see that she did not do a very good job at it compared to everybody else. Something she wouldn't necessarily have seen if she was looking at her own data by herself. So what happens next? The team decides to delete Ashley's data just to see what happens. It's a fair thing to do to get started. It's not necessarily the best data or best practices, but let's go ahead and get rid of hers, and then watch what happens to the team's results. All of a sudden, Team 4, the green one, now their curve looks like this. Smooth. More realistic of what actually was happening to their rocket. And they're able to interpret what actually happened and compare themselves to the other rockets in there and figure out who's worked out better and why. And that's pretty cool. But then look what happens next as well. At 2:48 p.m., Ashley, during the last 12 minutes, has been sitting off to the side, quietly redoing all of those measurements on the computer and entering in the correct ones. And you can see now her new revised measurement is beautiful. It's right in there with the average. She's done a very careful job at it. And unlike before, when I was having students say, OK, great, I did it wrong. Is that going to hurt my grade? Here, this doesn't count for their grade. They get 0 credit for it. But Ashley has gone of her own volition and has quickly gone in and done a really good job at collecting high-quality data without anybody asking her because of data accountability and data comparison. And that's what this allows us to do. All this is instant. And as she makes her changes, she improves the team's estimate of their own velocity instantly, because it's all a beautiful spreadsheet with formulas linked together that they built some of and I built some of, and it's a neat way to do it. So this is our gold standard of what we can do with our students, is really getting them to see each other's stuff and learn from it. So, what do you think?
Okay, how many people pick on other people, though?
It happens, but
Because I've seen group work where one person knows how to do it, the other 5 people don't.
Mm-hmm.
The other 5 people's data all looks alike because they all did the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you deal with that?
Well, it's a problem that it's a new problem that you wouldn't have had if they didn't see each other's data right up, and see it so clearly. And you talk about data consistency. You sort of try and see what happens when you use the other results. The other thing you often see is all those other people that did it wrong have exactly the same response because they copied from each other, but you can see it. And if this was really independent, like in this particular case, each one of these people is supposed to be working independently, and you can see that they all vary by a little bit. And that's what real data looks like. And you can show them, this is what real data team looks like. You all got exactly the same answer. That doesn't happen unless you're copying from each other, and you can call them on that now. And they're like, oh, and they go back and they all do it. without me saying, and now you're getting an F in the class, right? They go back and they want to do it right, not because it helps their grade, but because they can see it in context of everybody else. So, okay, let's move on to our next thing. And I can also tell you, I've been doing some actual education research on all of this here and talk about why it works, and it's kind of neat stuff that I've found out about this.
No.
All right. He's good. So the question is, here's a picture of a guy sitting in a lecture. Did the student just understand what you said? And part of our goal is, as we're teaching, is we should be able to figure that out some. And in the education lingo, how many of you have heard the word formative assessment? Yes, no? Yes, okay.
We just want to sing Kumbaya.
Yes, of course, it's beautiful. But it really is about getting inside your student's head and figuring out what they're thinking so that you can modify your instruction. And so we talked about Quickwrites and forms, but now those are all kind of, even though they're high tech, we can do even more sophisticated things to get more detailed information. So I would like you to come to this slide, Getting Input Graphically, and click on the link that says, not surprisingly, click here.
I'm not sure what picture.
And you are going to use the same number that you had before. You are going to scroll to slide number blank, whatever it is. So slide 1, you can just go ahead and say get started here.
Where am I?
And, let's see here. So you have, this has happened to some people before. Can I just check and see if you can, not supported by your browser. We'll need to have you share here, or if you want to open up in, I guess, try Safari and see if it will work for you, doing the exact same thing. The URL is written on the whiteboard over there if you want to get yourself started. Or actually, you can just copy and paste. Okay. Okay. And over here. All right, so you're there. Everybody's there. So you've chosen your slide. You've written your name in the corner of it. And now let's see what we're looking at. We are looking at a fake graph here, showing the stress level of my students during 16 weeks of my semester. We're on a semester system. You're quarters here or semesters? Semester. Okay, so you're familiar with the 16-week semester. And the stress level of my students. And in this class, this magical, mythical class, there are only quizzes in this class. And I would like you to think about where on this graph quizzes happened. Because presumably there's a causal relationship between quizzes and stress. So we don't know how many quizzes there are. I'm not telling you that. Quizzes are the only assessment in this course. There are no other assignments or due dates. So you're just trying to find where are those quizzes. And what you can do is on your slide, make sure you're on your slide, click the quiz day little bar, move it to one of the days that you think it is actually, there was a quiz that day. And Joel is going to demonstrate for us. So click and drag and move it to where you want. And let's see how well this works, if you can do it on an iPad or not. No. That's too bad. Okay, so watch over with Sean here and see if you can see what he's got going.
See if I get it right.
And I need to fix it so that it doesn't. It keeps people keep losing parts of the lines there.
You don't have them grouped?
They're grouped, yes they are, but they don't, they come apart for some reason. If you double click on them, they come apart.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Okay, I'm going to take a look here. 5,
Yeah, this one's
1. And I'm looking here and I'm not seeing any progress. So Kim, have you gotten some progress yet? Have you done things? Okay, it's not updating quite yet. Here, let's go to slide 2 and see what she's got. So right now, just to check and make sure I've got progress on everybody. Where is her information here? One of the things you can do with...
I'm on your slide. That's what the problem is.
Ah. So this happens occasionally, especially when we're first learning how to do it. And you can actually see that if you go up there.
You can see that there's two
People currently on that slide. The other thing that I can see is quickly looking through the thumbnails. I can glance through here and get a little tiny picture of what everybody has written. So I can automatically see that slide 1 has got some things, and slide 5, and I can see that there are 3 quizzes on slide 1, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quizzes on slide 5, and I'm getting a quick picture of a much more sophisticated question than sort of, you can answer with a simple clicker or with even a Quickwrite with the text. We're able to actually manipulate graphical things and see how well they do at doing that. And get a quick glance at everybody's ideas. So I'll flip through here and try and see. Sean says that there's quizzes everywhere. Every time that stress level goes up is a lot. Whereas if we go back to number 1, Sean, let's see, Joel.
That's because I kept removing this.
Oh, okay. But this is Joel's answer. Look at these different ideas, and now we can start teasing out. Okay, Joel, why did you choose only 3 of them here? Why those points?
If that was the only assessment in the class, then that would be the most stressful event. But presumably have background level of stress from other courses, and so it made sense to me that only in the days of peak stress, whether it was in that course, added on to whatever background stress you had.
So there's some aspect to this concept of background stress, whereas Sean has gone through and labeled slide 5 each peak because didn't label the one else, did it?
That's syllabus there?
No, that was when she wrote over the point.
So, but we get these to tease all this great stuff out, and it's all formative assessment in a more sophisticated way. All right, let's see what other things we can do.
This really you should be able to do this on a smartphone, though. I'm not. Do you know you may need? Do you have the Google app
No,
on
I
your?
didn't use that. Yeah, I'm
That
just
you might
using
need.
Safari.
Maybe so.
Make it work
Yeah,
on
you're
a,
right. I'm just using Safari just to
If I had, I don't have my iPad, so I can't.
Yeah.
And
it's on Safari.
let's go one more thing down here, which is,
But I'll try it on a Google app on my iPad at home.
yeah,
See if I
it
can
will
get it to
definitely
work.
be clunkier, I imagine.
But if it works.
Yeah.
Certain things are easier definitely on computer.
Yeah.
I have it on my phone.
So now, we've gotten some good things, some good inputs. We now have a question, apparently, it turns out. We are in a class of 6 people. So I heard that question, and we could spend some time addressing it as a class. But let's say that you had that question, you were whispering it to each other, and I'm up here with 80 other students, and I have no idea that you have this question. Like, can you do that on an iPad? Can you? So how do we get those questions from our students to us? We've shown you ideas of forms and Quickwrites that can reveal them, but I want to show you one other fun tool that has absolutely transformed the excitement level in my class, and it's actually a really low-tech thing that does work on a smartphone. It's
doing this, right?
Google Moderator. So go to this link for Google Moderator.
I'm out of the.
Well, you should still click on it once, Ginny.
I know, I have to be in the presentation mode.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't in
Google Moderator.
Sorry.
And here we are. Google Moderator is a forum for allowing students to ask questions and then vote on those questions, which is pretty cool. So you will see how this works. So what I'd like you to do is at the very bottom of your screen, there should either be something that looks like mine right here, or it should be a little button that says submit a question or ask a question.
But they have to be.
Not yet. So we have a series of questions here. Which one is the one that we should spend most of our time discussing? In order to decide that, I could either decide, which would be fine, in which case we could have just asked this question with a Quickwrite and it would have been quicker and simpler. But here I'd like to know which question you think is best. And to tell me that, you are going to go over here to either tell me you like this question, click the check mark, or you don't like this question, check the X. And let's see what happens. So vote no. Jenny?
On.
Yeah.
I'll vote no on this one.
Okay. I vote yes on something else. And what happens is that Google Moderator will automatically sort these questions based upon popularity using a special fancy algorithm that it has. And you can see them bouncing around. This question has moved to the bottom about what did you have for lunch? And this one has moved to the top. Does Sean really like bacon? So that now we can see what students are asking and which questions they have in common. And it's really quite powerful because it not only gives you a chance to see their questions, they can be either anonymous, in this case Sean and smiley face, and our third question, where's our third question here?
Hello.
Oh, Sean has answered 2 questions. Okay.
No, it's
Oh.
below. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I did answer the question.
Oh, you did answer the question.
So I showed the response.
Ah, yes.
So there's the response.
So we can put responses up here. But what also allows people to do is allows them to see each other's questions. What are the benefits of this?
I think it'd be good in the seminar class I'm running right now, because right now they send in a couple questions from the reading.
Okay.
So I get to see them all. I've tried sending them out to them, but I don't think they read them. But
Yeah.
if I made this part of the assignment, that they had to submit questions and then log back in after some time, and then rank the questions, then I could show that in class, and then those would be, maybe the top 3 would be what we actually address in the discussion. I could see something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah. And then they put a little mark into their questions. Maybe some of them have been really good, some of them didn't, like just Google the answer.
Yeah.
Give points based on how many times your question gets chosen.
So it's kind of fun to see the level of the question too, whether it's a higher level thinking question or a lower level
Yeah.
thinking question. You know.
And does that benefit you or to benefit the students?
Well, it would benefit me if I was trying to encourage them to ask more divergent types of questions in general.
Yeah.
I was trying to raise the bar in the classroom overall.
Can you think of a way, though, that it also benefits the students? To
What
see.
is to see the level of the
Yeah.
question?
Yeah.
Because if they're asking low-level questions and they see 5 that are high level, they're going to think, ooh, I better hold myself a little bit more accountable to.
It could do that. It could help them seeing a model of we have a sort of algorithm here for showing good questions. And now they get to see these are examples of good questions, something that they've probably never seen before. In your class, for example, your seminar class, they don't necessarily see each other's questions. They haven't seen all of the range of questions. They don't know where their questions necessarily fall in that range. So they get to see that. On top of that, as they're going through the questions, they have to decide, okay, first of all, that question, do I like that question? Do I know the answer to it already and I don't care about it, or is it a useless question? They're evaluating their own knowledge as they go through. And this is incredibly valuable if you think the worlds of metacognition and self-regulation. They have to ask themselves, do I know the answer to that? Okay, then I don't want to hear, I don't want to waste time. Or do I know the answer to that? And that checking in with themselves periodically is extremely powerful. And so it's not just for you to see the questions or for you to get the best questions. It actually serves a huge importance for them to see this. And then if you go down to the non-majors courses or the intro courses, there's also the added benefit of, well, oh gosh, everybody else had that same question too. I don't feel so stupid now, because you're finding a lot of that in certain fields, especially where they feel stupid for having a question when it turns out that actually, half the people in the class voted that was a good question. So that can be very valuable for morale.
I use this also in my class, and one of the things that I started doing with this is right before midterms, they could post questions, and I would get on at like 9 o'clock the night before the midterm and look at the top ranked questions and post responses. So they could, because what always ends up happening is they email you the questions, but they're all emailing you the same question, and so I'm never smart enough to cut and paste my email answer so that I could, I end up answering them. So this way it's all there. Plus, if they don't know if they really have any questions or not, they still can look at this and see what questions others had. And so I found my students really liked this, and they used it before the exams and the final.
Yeah, and the responses is really valuable too.
The students don't complain they have to log into another site. I had this problem. I was using Twitter a couple of years ago. They didn't like that they have to check Blackboard, Twitter, their email, their Yahoo, hundreds of things. So how your students do not complain needing.
So there's a couple ways that I do this. I always worry about technologically burdening them, with all the different things. I post everything through I have a Google website for the class, and I make a new one every semester for that same class.
You don't have Blackboard or anything.
And I also have Moodle. We have Moodle.
It's the same as Blackboard for all practical purposes.
And so I use those two things, but between those two things, you can actually, like on my Moodle site, I always post the class website, so they can just click and go right back and forth. And this year, I didn't get any complaints about that.
Well, I think you also have to set the expectation, right?
I got
I
it
played
because
around.
I was teaching this chemistry lab class, and I thought it was really nice because it is an advanced upper division lab, smaller class, and things change. So I was using Twitter, and they were complaining so much because I would say, oh, PCR worked, we can move forward with this next class, right? They were not happy.
Yeah.
Because they complained so much, I was like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, it's a reasonable
So much work on
concern.
me, why should I?
I mean, for the way I implement Google Moderator in my class actually is that we have Blackboard, or we have Moodle. I use Moodle as a central part of my class with lots of stuff on it. And so I actually have them submit the questions in Moodle as part of a form in Moodle, so they don't have to do anything. And I have a little script that runs that automatically uploads them into Google Moderator so that they don't actually have to log into it. This is something that I wrote custom, so it's not like something that's well published, but I should. If people are really interested, I will work on getting it so that it actually works reliably for everybody. So that's that. And then they click on Moodle and it brings them to voting. They still need to go to Google Moderator, and they still need to have a Google account to vote, because that's how it keeps track. That's way because I actually give points to the top voted question every day. I require this as every single day in my class. Or every single class period, they have to ask a question. And then every single day they have to come in on vote on those questions. The way that we implement that is like I said, keeping track of the grades through Moodle, and then they have to come over here. They still need a Google account to vote. And do they complain about it? They complained on days 1 and 2 when it didn't work right for half of them. But by day 3, if you notice up here, it says there are 13 votes on 3 questions from 5 people. And when I say, that's great, I'm sorry you had trouble, but 34 other people in the class succeeded, it's not like it's something that really requires you to install any great technology or anything like that. Because that's something that Twitter, for example, wouldn't necessarily give you. I guess it would give you the number of followers. But here, each time, I get to see very clearly this number of people succeeded at doing it. And so they're a little more social pressured into catching up with everybody, even though my students tend to be very low in terms of technology comfort level. The pre-service teachers are not like a standard biology, physics, chemistry major. They tend to be a little bit more technophobic, and we manage to do it. But a very good concern to be mindful of.
With Twitter and Facebook and a couple of other things, they'll generate feeds. And with Moodle, you can take those feeds, and I can show you how to do this. You can take those feeds and put them into your class site. It's a little.
So things are integrated a little bit better.
It's a little
That's
wacky so when you first have to figure it out, but you can really do that, and so that way you can reduce the amount of going to places. Yeah. You can do the same thing with Google Forms, because Google Forms actually or even a link to the page that the form is on and embed it actually into.
Which is what you did in your presentation.
We embedded it within our presentation,
as a
and
link,
I don't do that on Moodle, though I have the ability to because I also have the class website.
Right. Moderator, though, Moderator is interesting because I think eventually you'll be able to embed the moderator blocks.
That would be nice.
Google seems to do that with everything.
Yeah.
Eventually it gets to where you can take it and put it inside a web page because they know people want to use it that way. And so I hope they do that. That might be something that we tell them.
If we ask for it, I mean, we actually have been, they actually told me just yesterday, I was having a teleconversation that if there are things you want, features you want, and I've been putting a lot of effort into Moderator. I'm working on like a serious educational research paper into the value of the questions and some fun things like that. So it's we could make a good argument that because everybody that we talk to seems to be interested in it because it's so easy to implement, so easy to do this in your class. Yet it gives you such a window on what your students are thinking and has those benefits for them to get a window into themselves. So it's kind of a neat tool.
And you do, and Sean might have mentioned this, this is not something you can actually search for on Google.
Yeah.
You have to know the address because they haven't made it publicly available yet, but they told us we could use it publicly and share it. But it's, and I'm sure that eventually it'll be one of those things that you can click on when you look for the tools and Google's.
You know, that should be something we mention to them because when I've done 3 or 4 things here, and when I tell people, oh yeah, you can put that into Moodle, right? You just have to know how. And if they want to capture, especially the college group of educators,
Yeah.
then having right, how do I embed this into my learning management system? How do I put it into something so that my students don't have to go find it? That would be very, very helpful. And I think we could all do that. Well, we're all in Moodle, but you can put it in Blackboard too. If you can do it in one, you can do it in the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have all the capability
Yeah.
to do that, the API programming, all sorts of crazy things. Okay. So
in the
that is the end of our main prepared remarks.
Yeah.
Do you actually have any real serious questions that you want to sort of address, since those were all kind of bacon related? Which, by the way, can I share a quick story that relates to this? So Sean wrote this email saying, let's do Panera Bread again, because it worked so well. So last time when we were at Dominguez Hills, they had done Google Moderator question. One of the people popped up on there and said, could we do burgers next time instead of sandwiches? And everybody's like, oh, why didn't we think of that? And poor Kathy, who's been organizing this, had never occurred to you. So I wonder if we had a Google Moderator series where you could put in those questions, whether you would have said,
You would have gone to Five Guys.
It works so well. You know, and why did you say it's worked so well for us?
Why did I say that?
Yeah.
Oh, because we've had food and drinks and
We
everything.
didn't complain.
Yeah.
No one complained.
Nobody complained, and it was easy for the teacher, which is usually why we do a lot of our instruction. But when you give them a forum to do it and get them onto it every time, you learn that it turns out that those things may or may not be true. I have no idea. I really enjoyed my sandwich afterwards. and would have liked it better than a burger.
So the other thing is like I said, both Matthew and I have been using this in our own teaching, and I think one of the best things that happened to me was my students were standing after class talking about another class they had together, and this project they had to do. They said, well, you know what, let's do this on Google Docs, and I'll email you tonight when I get it set up, and let's just share. And they learned really quickly how to use all of this, and they picked it up immediately. And these are non-major students. This is a legal studies class that I was teaching. It's the same group of students that Matthew has. And so what we're hoping to find, we have to work with the elementary and secondary credentialing programs, and they now want more technology in the credential programs. And what I have found, they said this 10 years ago, or 11 years ago when I started at CSUN, and that meant making sure our students knew how to use PowerPoint, Excel, Word, and things like that. It does not mean that anymore, because they all know how to do that. I mean, my son's in 4th grade, he knows how to do that. He knew how to do it in 2nd grade. So it's more what better ways we can use it. And the other reason why we really have enjoyed doing this with the teachers is a lot of times when you do professional development with school teachers, they get upset with you because they don't want to add more things to their curriculum. And this does not add more things to your curriculum. This just helps you hopefully use your curriculum better because it's a tool. And so we do things like I do the phenotype lab with the 7th grade teachers who do life science, or I did a whole thing on modeling DNA and how you can use, you can take that and make a better, using Picasso and taking pictures of the models so that they could all see each other's models and figure out what was right and wrong about each model and things like that. And it was done anonymously, so they don't know whose models they're looking at, whereas if you're walking around the room, either they don't really look at them or, just, so we're really finding this to be a very powerful tool. And we're not necessarily even advocating for Google, except that we love Google because this stuff is free, it's easy, and our students are really picking up on it. So we use mostly Google things. So what we want to do now is teach you how to make a form. Does any?
Did you teach them how to do a form? We saw you demonstrated forms in your first lesson.
We did a little bit, but no, people wanted to make forms, so that would be a good thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's do it. Let me switch the microphone over to you. So.
Okay.
I will drive over here.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to have you go ahead and you can exit out of this for right now. And you need to get into Google. So most of you have already signed into Google, right?
Yeah, I haven't done it, but I had this.
So once you're in Google, go ahead and sign in. and you are over in under documents. And some of them they've changed, so you actually have to search for documents. But when you get to this page here, you're going to do documents. And you can see that we've done different things. One thing I should also mention while this page is up for a second, this is how, when we made our slides, these are the slides right here. Matthew and I were really, really busy at work because we actually tried to get out a big grant that was due on Monday. We didn't try, we actually did it. It almost killed us all. Our team did for NSF. But anyway, we got on it. We both have young kids. Once the kids were in bed, 10 o'clock at night, we're online talking through our slides together, and that's how we put together this presentation. And so anyway, it's really a nice tool for sharing documents too. So if you go on here and you go over to create, you're going to notice that there's these different kinds of things you can create. And you can do the presentation is what we were showing you today. It's like the slideshow. And you could do a document, which is more like a Word document. And the other thing to keep in mind, as I mentioned, that some of these, that you can't quite do everything in presentation that you can do in PowerPoint. But they're constantly updating this. And one place I've noticed a lot of things that have been added is documents. It's much more like Word now. It has a lot of, they've made it much more integrated in terms of the types of things it can do and things like that. So just keep that in mind. These things are constantly changing and they're constantly updating. But what we're asking you to do now is form. And when you go into form, you'll notice that it's green just like spreadsheet. And that's because these two are connected. When you start making a form, it automatically is making a spreadsheet for you. So go ahead and click on form. And what should happen is this. You should have something like this in front of you. And the very first thing I do when I'm doing any of these is I name whatever I'm working on. Because as soon as you name it, it starts to automatically save for you, so you don't have to remember to save it.
What are we building a form to do?
So what do you want to make this form? I mean, if you can think of some questions that you might want to ask your students. I always do a first day form. I mean, we're not on the first day right now, but it's something you can use in the future. And so there's always some and what I do is I actually start by asking them to put their name. But I use help text because I want them to put it last name first and then first name. So you can use the help text to do that. And the reason I do that is because then I can select those names and put them into the Quickwrite. And then I have their names. I don't have to assign them numbers. And it alphabetizes them and things like that. If you make this a required question, they're not going to be able to finish the survey until they've actually answered that question. Just like you've all had surveys like that, right? That bump you out because you forgot to put the right zip code or whatever. So that's that. Now, and that gives you your first question. Then if you go to sample question number 2, you just click on the little pencil. I guess they figured that you at least are going to ask 2 questions in your form. And you can change the type of question type you want. There's a scroll down menu, so you can do paragraph text. So for example, that question I asked about the phenotype, I might want a longer answer than just a sentence about that, and I could have made it a paragraph. And then again, if you want them to make sure they answer, you'd put a thing and it would put the red asterisk next to it. Sure. And then if you want to add another question, you just go up to add item right there. And you can do a scale question, you can do multiple choice. The scale, you could do like a Likert scale type of question. So you can say, how much do you like biology, and you can scale it from awesome to hate it, or whatever. And
Smells like bacon.
yeah, and so then it'll automatically put your Likert scale here. Oh, no worries, no worries. I totally understand. Now, personally, I don't like these plain forms. So the other thing that you can do is if you go up to theme, you can change. They have set themes. So for example, when I was doing a seed lab, I used or rather, when I was doing fast plants with my students, I used the garden. But they have like 81, and maybe they'll have more eventually. So let's see. Let's make this one, let's do classic books. And this is what it's going to look like when my students open this, okay? But now when you apply, just like you do in PowerPoint when you're applying backgrounds to your slides, you just say apply. It goes back to this, but you'll notice that the theme's still there. Now, the other thing you'll notice is that if you want to look at the published form, the link is down here. And what I often do is take that link and put it into the website tiny URL and make a tiny URL. Or if I'm linking it directly to my website, I just paste it in and have a link text that might say first day survey or something like that. Because otherwise, you end up with, so if you enter your URL there, and they'll make one randomly for you, which is right here, or you can actually type in. And this is a really useful for the Google things, and this is not a Google tool, but I use it a lot because their webmail addresses are huge. So then, let's say I did this, and I wanted to see what the responses of my students were. Then I would go back.
First, let me quickly add some responses.
So now this is what they get, right? You got that before. And now I want to look at their responses. I go to here, back to my documents, and what's going to show is actually the spreadsheet when I click on this. So here I have my spreadsheet, and it timestamps, which I love because then my students, I know when they've done it. And I can edit however I want to. Now you notice that this has a 1 here telling us that one person has filled out that form. When we looked at the phenotype survey, we should have seen like a 60 up there or something like that. I've had 60 people participate in that form. And then you can look at when you look at the phenotype one, you see 53 people have. Now you can also, in looking at data, you can also, is it data?
It's form where you want the summary?
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes. You can show summary of responses, and it gives you pie charts of how they responded, or...
They won't, because we messed up. With this form.
If I'd kept the yeses and nos, it would have. And because I converted them, it's saying that there's no responses yet for that.
Let me go back to the first day form and see. Form, show summary of responses. There we go. How much do you like biology? 100% of people like it.
Yeah. So it's a really nice tool and I use forms for other things too. I've used forms I've set them up in different kinds of walks of my life even, just to have, if I need to gather data from people. Like we're writing a grant, we need some information from everybody. I just set up a quick form, have a text box, they put it in, then I could just take the thing and paste it into the file and things like that.
And it's like the lab potluck, right?
Yeah. So that's how to make a form. Did everyone at least try to make a questions or something?
So if I were to take this, make it into a tiny URL, and
then plug it into one of the courses I'm teaching, they are not using Gmail, they would still be able to access it.
Yes.
Not outside of that.
Right. So they can. Yeah. Yeah. So forms forms that you can make them available for everybody. Now, what might not be available is this, right? So you have to share this with them, and you may not want to. And so therefore, you are the only one that has access to that.
So the creator has
Right.
responder doesn't.
Yeah. Now, if you wanted them to enter this in the Quickwrites, you notice that you can enter those anonymously also. I make my students sign in. And the reason why is because then if I'm looking at revision history, I can look at who has answered what. Especially if you get a smart aleck that's trying to change answers. Because I can look at the revision history and see.
If you wanted to go a little bit deeper, I mean, you actually could take something like this that you wanted the names and everything to appear on, and you can link it to another spreadsheet with the answers and no names on it. It's a little bit more complicated, but it can actually be done. So then you can protect anonymity, but also be able to get like an idea of who's responding and who's doing what. Just because just like Excel, right? You know how you can link spreadsheets in Excel, like two different files. You can do the same thing on here.
And as I showed you with the phenotype, you can create your own type of graphing, collecting the data you want. Now, sometimes when you're working with students, you don't necessarily want to show them the graph right away. You might want them to create a graph first, depending upon what skills you want them to use, and then you could create the graph and show them.
This is a silly question, but where Matthew's name is, did you have to ask the student then to, that was one of the questions to put your name in?
Yeah.
Because otherwise you don't know who's who's, right?
Right.
That's a really important point about, because these Google forms are available to anything, but even if you are logged in, like you are, I was logged in as me, but no trace at all of my Google account goes with my form submission. So they're totally anonymous unless you ask them to put their name. And so they can say anybody's name, even if it's not mine.
Now, inside of our domain, I think you can actually click the authenticate thing, and then it keeps track of which students are filled out. But they have to be authenticated yet.
Well, there's nothing difficult about doing it this way. You have to just have it be part of the spreadsheet.
You find out how many people can actually spell their own name.
Yeah.
And there are I use a lot of questionnaires in Google set up here where there is a name associated automatically. So I have an idea of questionnaire these are going to be a little bit more flexible. Sometimes you think you have multiple sections of the class where you want, they're not tied to this class. They don't really create every semester or copy it over with Blackboard courses. So there's times when that's really nice, and there's times when you want everything to go away, and you want it to be tied to Blackboard course.
One of the things we should probably talk about if you want to use it for semester to semester is how do you copy it, right? And what you do is you duplicate the spreadsheet. When you duplicate the spreadsheet, it also, you can rename it, and then that also duplicates the form.
But you have to delete everything out of your spreadsheet once you've duplicated it.
Here's our first day form. All I'm going to do is I go file, make a copy, just kind of like you might expect. This is going to be first day form 2013. Okay. And you can see it's copied everything exactly as it was, including my old data, but I can just go ahead and delete and just select it and hit the backspace button and the delete button. Now it's ready to go as a new beautiful form 2013. It's different because everybody's data in place.
That's easy.
Yeah. So it is very easy to duplicate them from time to time.
But if you don't know that, it's very hard to figure out exactly how to make it.
Yes, so what form is it annoying? You can't just select the form and copy.
Yeah.
And paste it somewhere else if you would with any other type of document. It's make a copy and file it. Thank you.
When you set up a Google site, like a web page, Google, is it possible to, do you usually want
link output form or from
From the form.
you can embed it in the frame.
Do you have any examples of that, Jenny, on
Those
there?
theme
Do you know?
forms.
No, Norm does though.
Will it shrink the whole theme down
I
to the
think,
size of the
but-
frame, or will it like just focus on the question?
I think it depends on how you embed it.
Okay.
So this is my website, and we took the pictures from that website. So he just took a snapshot, didn't you? This is a snapshot, or is this
No,
actually?
This is the actual website.
So one of the things you'll notice is that, like, I have my surveys here. So I have a service learning, because I do a service learning component to this class, and because you're not logged in as me, and so I actually closed the survey at some point because I didn't want them. But and this is your thoughts about science teaching, which actually didn't work very well because something else happened. But and then like I have reflections that they had to do in class material.
Where's your Quickwrites? Right here?
Yes, there's my Quickwrites. So one of the things I did was I assigned them computer numbers. And so what I did was from the form on the first day, I selected their names and put them in, and then I alphabetized them. And this goes all the way. You can just see, I pretty much did it every class time I had one. So, and I could scroll through and see what different students had answered, and sometimes I used it as a resource to.
Yeah, so you can just sort of use it like a mini portfolio.
Mhm.
Questions and responses.
Yeah, and then if you go back to my website, the other thing I have on here is I made a sheet for office hours because I made them all come after the first exam. I do this in my class, and they had to sign up. And I have it grouped based on day, so you can color code things like that.
Simpler version of the more sophisticated stuff you probably talked about with your calendaring, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. And then if you go back, another thing was I was going to show them like an example of if you scroll all the way up. I also have it divided into their lab sections. So go into Thursday lab. So these were the different labs. So for example, in photosynthesis, what happened was Thursday ran out of time because I was doing some other things with them. And so I uploaded pictures from Tuesday's lab so they could still analyze the data, because this is the one where they're doing the chromatography. So you can, it's hard to see on here, but you could see the chromatography things from that class. And because sometimes things like that happen, but I didn't want to scrap the whole lab. So here they could actually see what the results would have been in real time for my students. And then if you go back, one more. These are some of the, I'm trying to figure out which lab is. So if you look at the island evolution spreadsheet, maybe, if you view that one, does that one show? So it shows my groups and their responses to them. And one group didn't put their stuff in. Sometimes that happens, and then I yell at them and make them go back and do that. Oh, actually, I know why, because I didn't have a group 4 and 6, and this is my smaller class. That's right. So I didn't have, and so they, and right here they can all see the types of data and make analysis, and so then they can answer all the questions after looking at everybody's data, things like that. So, any questions, comments, concerns? So yeah, you can see that we're using what we preach about in all kinds of ways.
So what's your next step with your program, Sean? You're going to be trying.
We're going to meet again, I think probably April-ish. Does that sound good? To talk about what you guys have done with what we talked about. And then that will be the end. Although we may try, I guess we talked about, probably that we'll also talk about doing something either in our college or more university-wide, like a monthly brown bag about teaching stuff, because nobody does any of that on our campus, and when they do, it seems, well, I don't know. It seems like we all have a lot to learn from each other that we never talk about.
Yeah.
We love having a team. that we work with, because I've learned so much. I mean, you know, my PhD's in plant molecular genetics, and I was a high school teacher in my former life, but I always enjoy teaching, and so it's nice to have people to talk through with that. And you get, I think we're better because of it, because I think all of us grow because of our conversations, and we all try different things. Oh, you know, I hadn't thought about that. I'm going to try that too. And so we can reach a bigger audience.
And hopefully, some of these guys will want to go maybe the workshop again. Because that's worth going to. Well, that's us, right?
Oh, that's us.
Right, isn't it June 8th? That's when
Yeah.
we're going back?
Yeah.
When we go back to Google to talk about what we've done.
But we get to invite other people.
Oh, that's true.
I forget how many, but
I didn't know that.
look at form.
Is this how you found out? Did you find this out? Because aren't you're one of the,
I'm one of the yes, the ambassadors.
you get a jacket with Big G on it?
No, but they do the check, so to the university.
Translates into food.
Yeah, that's what we're using. We're basically doing exactly what you're talking about. We're having a little brown bag series
Yeah.
of targeted group of teachers, and Google buys lunch, and we just get together and we're going to work on stuff together. And it's not necessarily a brown bag as much as a support group.
Yeah.
And it's really nice, and so our group, we have 14 that we're going to be working with. And there is a move in, at least at one level in our faculty, that want to improve the way they're teaching. So it's kind of exciting. You'll notice that at least in our department, it's all the young faculty. But
Depends here.
yeah, some
Depends
of our
on how much they've been burned by changes in our technology stuff, because things are really changing fast on our campus at this point, right? With Blackboard's gone in June. People are still completely gone.
Yeah, we only have the choice of doing it,
Yeah.
but I don't mind it.
Yeah, we're in the process of switching.
Yeah,
And so when Blackboard goes away, that's going to be frightening for I think a lot of faculty. The other thing is, it seems like just when you get used to something, hey, there you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's always been an argument about education, which is why when we're working with the actual K-12 teachers, if they've been around for a while, they've seen the pendulums, and nobody ever gives anything a chance. But what we like about this is it's not necessarily a new curriculum, which is often what happens. You get used to the curriculum, but rather you can take your repertoire that you have and just start tweaking it a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the really important sort of take-home messages about technology. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. Try and see where you can find stuff that helps you do things a little bit better and more efficient.
See, that was my second year of doing that, and if you looked at my first year to my second year, I really improved, and I'm hoping that it'll continue to get better. Now, and I've been trying to integrate more of this. I teach a graduate level course in bioinformatics, and I haven't been using this stuff because that's all we do is computer-based stuff, so I haven't, it's a smaller group, and I can kind of keep an eye on where they're at with things. It's only 24 students versus 48 students.
Well, it's really interesting. I'm teaching entomology this semester, and I teach the freshmen, 240 freshman class. I do all sorts of stuff, and implement all sorts of technology stuff. And in my 20-person entomology class, I was like, I don't know, multiple freshmen.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I've chosen to do that, except for
I'm trying to integrate a little bit more every year, and so, like I've always used clickers, and I didn't use clickers in bioinformatics for a long time, but then I found that I teach it in a computer lab, and I found that when I started using clickers, they started paying more attention. Even though I still get idiotic questions, I was complaining to that. I have a student who's like, and it was all I could do not to stand better yesterday, because it's been a long week and I'm tired. It's like,
Well, I think like,
You
this is why I love Google Moderators, because the idiotic questions do fall to the bottom.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, I think for me, like talking about this, when I teach biostatistics again next spring, probably in a year, will definitely change a lot of how we do things using technology because of what you're saying. You know, you get in a room full of computers, and what are the students doing? They're looking at Facebook, they're looking at their email. I mean, I look at my email every day. Probably would delete that from my video. You know, I mean, there's just a bunch of distractions, and so it's partly you have to you can use technology in the classroom, but you have to also go, how can I make the students use technology more responsibly in the classroom? Because that's the argument you get from a bunch of faculty, right? I don't want these in my class, right? I want to collect them in a trash can before class so no one can use their cell phone. And instead of thinking about, well, how can I make the student use the cell phone as part of the class and integrating it into the class so that they're not, right? So that instead it's answering something on a Google form, right?
Yeah.
And
The
then
best
cell phone
way to prevent
becomes-
them from surfing Facebook on their phone
Yeah.
is to have them using their phone to do something else.
Yeah.
There's no way they can do
Yeah.
both at the same time.
Yeah, but then it becomes a part of the engaging in the classroom, and this thing doesn't become as, even by them, as used as like, oh, look at Facebook.
Well, one of the things is we've actually teamed up with LACO, the Los Angeles County Office of Education, and they have a whole series of professional development about teaching your students to be digital citizens.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
so I think there's some lessons that we can glean from that to apply to our university students too. And so I'm actually kind of looking forward to seeing what they're doing with that because they've only just briefly told us about it. But I think the reality is these are getting more and more commonplace. And so we want our students to also think about how are they going to be a professional?
Yeah.
Because I can't tell you how many places you'll go and you'll see people, you know, even adults doing this when they should be focusing on whatever. And so how do you teach them? I always just think it's funny because it's like, I had a student who was constantly, I hate when they text in class, but I'm trying to and then they're in your office, every office hour saying, I don't understand this, Dr. Vandernon. And I was thinking, well, you're paying attention to class, so I wouldn't have to reteach it.
Well, like me, I like, when my wife and I go out, I like to leave this at home. Because it's habit for me to look at it.
We're so accessible to our
Yeah.
students.
I can send you a nice link to the dating sites that says something like 35% of first dates are the last date because somebody's spending too much time texting during the date. It's my most powerful message to people. You gotta learn how to turn it off.
Using this in the classroom, and this semester in science, I forgot to ask them to bring magnifying glasses. So in class, we just brought up an app, and I'd say 75% of the students had smartphones, so then we were able to use magnifying glasses. And it's amazing how teaching has changed because of accessibility.
And so I think we have to embrace it rather than be old fogies about it. Because I get that way. I mean, I don't have a Facebook account, and my students get mad at me. Aren't you going to friend me? I'm like, I don't have one. I don't even have time to answer my emails.
Well, and they don't think it through, the things that they post after they friend you. I'm like,
Oh,
I
they're
don't want to know
entertaining.
that.
Exactly. So, yeah, but it opens up a whole different way that this generation is communicating with each other.
Yeah.
So, this is terrific. Yeah. You get to get a nice glass of wine and everything, and still.
That's awesome.
Oh, dear. But I think that some of those
And
kinds
he's
of
still
things.
texting.
July is cell phone courtesy month. Who knew?
So anyway,
Superseding the 4th of July.
one of my favorites to show early in the class semester is that there's a place for them. They're really powerful. But there's a place where you want it turned off.
Absolutely.
But I mean, this thing works
Practice
faster than
that.
my Commodore 64.
I know exactly. That was my first computer.
TI-80. Or even Apple IIe.
Yeah.
I mean, this stuff that you could have, well, computers 5 years ago.
Dinosaurs.
Well, the entire computing power of the Apollo space mission was 64K
Yep.
for total memory, I believe.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool, that's a cool little string.
Wow. Well, and like the entire ENIAC wasn't it like maybe 120? Yeah, like this thing the size of a diesel locomotive.
And my husband yells at me, but I still have all my floppies
Oh, no.
because my dissertation's on them.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
I don't even have a machine that can read them. He's like, throw them away.
It's like 8
But
tracks.
I spent 5 years of my life on that.
Like 8 tracks. for the car,
Exactly.
right?
You could wallpaper one of the walls in your office.
That'd
There
be
you
cool.
go.
That would be cool.
I
Because
miss-
they are colored. I'm gonna do
I
that.
miss change over time. That's a good idea. That would be fun.
Yes.
That's a
We
lot
had
of
some
space.
8 tracks.